what do you think the impact is of that over time? I have been trying to think more about the difference between suffering and sacrifice. And sacrifice comes from two root Latin words, and the meaning of them are one being holy and one to make. So sacrifice is to make holy.
Mhm.
And I think that the idea of that is to supersede oneself, as holy is something that's beyond oneself or a little bit higher in terms of,
Mhm.
if we were to take the metaphysical plane of heaven and hell and then earth is in the middle, I think holy would be that heaven. So I think that's something that we're consistently reaching for, is something that we're making holy through sacrifice. I think that might be the connection. But also, suffering seems to be just pain for the sake of pain.
Yeah.
And you could definitely make the David Goggins argument of anytime that you're in pain or suffering, it increases your capacity in the future to suffer. So that's
Mhm.
something you want to do as well. And
Yeah, I'm also a big David Goggins fan. I think the man's an absolute animal, and it's like unhealthy the way that he operates. But at the same time, it's like the most vicious thing ever, and nobody will ever mentally screw with him. So I love it. I love the kind of way that he operates. But yeah, I don't know, with that, I felt like there was kind of a mix of both. There was a little bit of sacrifice and definitely a whole lot of suffering. But I'd say most of for me, when it came down to it during that time period, that was really mentally difficult for me. It was like, there is a lot more, like, suffering was a more day-to-day kind of thing where every day I was suffering through this 9 to 5, and then I was suffering when I was at my lifts because I couldn't do what I wanted to do because of my back, and then the rehab would make me feel good, but then at the end of it I'm like, I can't believe I just went and did cat camels and held a band for 45 minutes, and this is what I've come to now. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I'd say in the micro, there is a lot of suffering. But if I look over the whole 6 months in the macro, there's definitely a lot of sacrifice. And again, I've mentioned it a lot, but my fiance, I mean, she went through a ton of sacrifice for me to do this, because I was waking up at 4 in the morning, going and playing in the mornings whenever my rehab was close to finish, but I was still working this 9 to 5. So I'd go and I'd play for 2.5 hours in the morning, whoever I could get to come out to the gym with me or me by myself. I'd come home, shower, work 9 to 5. And when I got off at 5, and most of the time 6, I would go and COVID was in the midst, so I didn't have a weight room, but I had some free weights and other things. So I would go and do like an hour and a half workout, like upstairs. And by then it's already 8 o'clock. She made dinner, and I'm like, well, now I got to eat and go to bed because I got to be up at 4. So there was just a lot of things to go through. And I think that's where a lot of the sacrifice came, was the time, the kind of mental state of going through it was even a sacrifice in itself. Like, honestly, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but it was a sacrifice of a lot of happiness too. Like, a lot of the things that I really enjoyed doing, I couldn't do anymore because I was sacrificing it to be able to get to where I am. So that was a weird balance. But like I said, in the micro, a lot of suffering; in the macro, a lot of sacrifice.
it's interesting what sacrifices. It seems to be the prolongment of some kind of suffering and desire to say no to momentary pleasure for long-term gain.
Yep, exactly. That's what I think, a lot of people that don't make it to that higher level, or especially in volleyball, where it's not easy, don't get me wrong, but like, there's a lot of opportunity to find yourself overseas or in like a league. Again, not even close to easy, but there's a lot of those people that, like you said, they get that opportunity where it's like, well, I have 3 hours of a gym open tonight that I could go and like get reps and play a little bit, but my buddy wants me to like come to his house and like drink an 18 pack. And it's like 90% of the time they're going to take that, because that sounds way better than going to like a hot ass gym and sweating. But the people that end up, all right, yeah, my bad. I don't know what was going on. It
No,
was
you're all
left
good.
like 60% when we started, and then it died at like 16. And I don't know. This thing's like 6 years old, and it's just been a pain in the ass. But
That
all
sounds
right,
like
we're
my
back.
old iPhone.
Yeah. I've had that issue too. Me and technology do not get along ever.
Here we're talking a little bit about the would-be's and the pros and the difference between those people in terms of mindset.
Yeah. So like we were saying, it's just kind of that difference between you going in and doing the extra work versus you not. And then you also, it flashes back to that being able to point out faults. Like, there's a lot of guys that I know that grind and work super hard, work out all the time, but then they get in the gym and they want to practice their 5-foot bounce ball up to the ceiling, and they'll hit 1,000 of those instead of learning how to hit a cut shot or a deep corner. And then when they get into the game, they just get shit housed 15 times in a row because all the training they've been doing has been for hitting lines. Mm-hmm. So it's like there's a difference in that too. But I'd say as long as you can get them to turn that mentality to finding their faults and improving on it, they can make their way. But I think the people that just will always pick to go out and do something fun over going and training, that it's never going to happen for them. Just because that's like, if you don't, it's the same thing with the class. Like if you don't do your homework, if you don't put in the work, you're not going to get a good grade. And if you don't ever do that, you're never going to make any progress.